Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of At My Desk. I'm your host, Dr. William Lester, and this program is brought to you by the American Institute of Metaphysics. I want to thank you for joining us, or joining me for another show. We are in season 3. It's our third show, our third episode for 2014 and the third season. And today I wanted to touch a little bit on a subject that's very popular among institute students and prospective students, and also kind of out in society, and that is demonology. And when you say the word demonology, you get different reactions, different responses from different people. And so what do we mean when we talk about demonology? What is it? Well, it's the study of demons. And of course, we could probably go on and on about what demons are. There's a philosophical angle, certainly a theological angle, paranormal, metaphysical, occult, what have you. But I like to try to keep it in a relatively coherent, easy to understand framework. Now, before we get deep into demonology, we have to look at the spirit world, because demonology certainly can come into that construct, and understand that there are different kinds of spirits. We talk about ghosts, and then we talk about demons, and certainly they are two separate things. So when you talk about hauntings, for example, it doesn't always necessarily refer to a ghost haunting. And by ghost, I mean a human spirit. The spiritual essence of a person that was once here alive, flesh and bone. When we talk about demons, we're talking about something entirely different. They are spirits, to be sure. But a demon or a demonic spirit was never alive in the human sense. It's not the residual after effects of a once living person. And that leads us to another term that we have given these type of manifestations, and that is inhuman. And of course, that term is, I feel, self-explanatory. An inhuman spirit manifesting. And for arguable and debatable reasons, these type of manifestations are negative, malevolent, aggressive. The question might arise, why are they that way? What is the basis of their malevolence? And once again, we end up having to fall back on various traditions, various belief systems, various worldviews, various constructs. Are these inhuman spirits, these demons, the fallen angels of the Judeo-Christian tradition? Are these gods of the old world, fallen out of favor, no longer observed, no longer the objects of worship exile to obscurity? Well, it could be all of the above. It could be all of the above. So we come to the concept of what I like to call multiple truths. In some instances, it doesn't necessarily have to be this or that. Two things can be true at the same time. And we seem to actually see this in manifestations of demonic activity. But the fact is that these beings, these entities, seem to hold human beings in great contempt and hold a level of hatred that is almost immeasurable. Now, let's talk for a minute about demonic manifestations, demonic hauntings, negative hauntings. Now, as human beings, we are predisposed to try to categorize and classify. And this is one of the means by which we try to develop some level of understanding through a systematic process. It may not be foolproof. It's certainly not infallible. But it does give us a context. It gives us a framework, a window through which we can look and see and hope for some clarity. So when it comes to demonic manifestations, we look at three levels or three stages: infestation, oppression, and possession. So we begin with infestation. And of course, that word in your mind may trigger images of perhaps an insect infestation or some other undesirable pest. And that's very much why that tag has kind of stuck. What are the signs of demonic infestation? They are many and varied, but there are some basic themes, some consistent characteristics. One is unexplained noises. Now, this by itself does not completely evidence demonic hauntings, because certainly in human hauntings with ghosts and other psychic phenomena, unexplained noises can certainly be a characteristic. But the growing level intensity of these noises, scratches, or the sound of scratching from unseen sources, oftentimes seeming to come from behind the walls or out of thin air. It sounds like the claws of an animal, as if it were scratching on furniture or up against the wall or on the ceiling or on a door. Then the rappings and the poundings. And this is the upping, the ramping up, the amping up of the activity, pounding on the wall. The sound of glass shattering out of nowhere. Victims of these type of hauntings have reported, for example, the sound of glass breaking, almost like a huge mirror shattering. And yet, when they look, there's no evidence of any broken glass anywhere. Now, why do these type of things happen? Well, the theory is this. These type of entities feed or consume fear. Now, what do I mean? We know that thoughts and feelings and emotions have real energy. In fact, we use terms to describe, we use colorful terms, right? We say red with anger, green with envy. If you're feeling down and depressed, you feel blue. If you're afraid, you're yellow. You have a yellow streak. So these, I think, are ways that we try to understand that these feelings and emotions do emit actual energy. They do radiate real energy. Well, these negative entities feed on the energy that is radiated from fear. You remember as kids, we were always told that if you run into a dog, a mean dog that's snarling and growling at you, that it can sense your fear. And these entities seem to be the same way. So they, in fact, attempt to generate fear, to consume, and then in turn grow in their power and ability. They grow more powerful, they can do more things and generate more fear. And so it's a terrible cycle. Breaking down your will, weakening your mind. And this leads us into stage number 2, oppression, where there's an all-out assault on the senses, on your psychology, making you wonder whether or not you're even sane. And so the process continues. Nightmares, vocalizations, apparitions manifesting. There are even cases in which the experiencer will witness an apparition that they may interpret as the ghost or spirit of someone that they know. Now, if it's a demonic haunting, this is a trick. It's a trick to try to lull the experiencer into a false sense of ease and comfort. After all, your loved one is reaching out to you from the other side. Sometimes these entities will mask or masquerade as the ghost or spirit of a child. And we find this, interestingly, when the experiencers are women. Now, why is this happening? It's happening in order for the entity to tap into and exploit those maternal instincts and attempting to use those instincts as a weakness. Obviously, having maternal instincts is not an inherent weakness, but it can be exploited. Here's a scenario. A female experiencer is dealing with what she believes is the spirit of a little child. And this child spirit says that it's lonely, It's got nowhere to go, and it wants to stay. It won't cause any trouble. It just wants to stay. And then the maternal instincts kick in. And the female experiencer says, sure, don't scare me, or don't walk down the hall rattling chains like something out of A Christmas Carol or some phantom out of Scooby-Doo. Don't do any of that, but you can stay. And then something happens. The sweet, innocent child spirit is gone. And what's left in its place is more negativity, more unexplained noises, more horrific visions and nightmares, sometimes even physical attacks, choking, scratching. There never was a child ghost. It was always this inhuman thing, this monster. And it tricked the experiencer into giving it permission to manifest. You know the old legends about a vampire not being able to enter a dwelling or a place without being invited? Same principle applies. But this person has given this entity permission to interfere and manifest in their lives. Remember, we live in a universe of free will. And you've given this terrible, evil being permission, albeit deceptively. You gave it permission. And so the attacks continue. Now, the first two stages, infestation and oppression, are preludes to what the entity is ultimately hoping for, stage 3, possession. Ultimately, that's what these things want. They want entry. They want a doorway. They want to be able to get into your life with the hope of destroying your life or those around you, or having some terrible negative impact on your life. And under possession, the people have often asked this: what's the goal of possession? And the answer is a very unfortunate reality. They ultimately want you to cause some level of immeasurable harm to yourself or someone immediately close to you. Possession victims often talk about committing suicide or harming others. And these type of entities would like nothing better for either of those eventualities. Now, a minute ago, I talked about giving permission, and I gave you a scenario. And while that's a common scenario, it's certainly not the only scenario. A similar series of events can be triggered. In fact, I use the term trigger mechanism. It's a kind of catalyst. Dabbling in the occult can be like swimming in shark-infested waters. Trying to summon spirits, summon demons to do your bidding. And some people are naive enough. They've read one too many novels or seen a few too many movies. And it's not like Harry Potter. You can't summon a demon and draw a circle around on the floor and keep the demon out. Once these things are given permission to manifest, you have no control over them. Because you have to understand what these things are. These are entities, these are beings that predate mankind. These non-physical, non-corporeal intelligences predate mankind. They predate the earth. They may predate the physical universe. And by that I mean the planets, the stars. They may predate the physical universe. And that means they've been around for a long time. And by virtue of that, they're a lot smarter than we are. So if you're dabbling in the occult, if you're trying to summon demons, if you're working some ritual, you're dabbling with beings that have the knowledge of the ages and absolute hatred and contempt for you as a human being. That's a terrible combination to try to get mixed up with. And this is the danger of those type of activities. Sometimes the ritual or the dabbling can come from something as simple as trying to operate a Ouija board. Because it serves as a conduit. It serves as a kind of gateway that you can inadvertently unlock. Now, I know that there are people on the internet who will tell you that there's no inherent danger in the Ouija board. It's okay, and they know how to do it, and they have, and and I would counsel you to rethink that. So when it comes to that type of thing, when it comes to summoning and conjuring, I would just say very simply, don't do it. Because even if nothing were to occur in the short term, you have still potentially opened up things for down the road. Remember, to these type of entities, there is no time. They are not subject to the passage of time the way we are. And so 5 years can go by, 10 years can go by, 20 years can go by, and nothing happens. But when you're having a moment of weakness or despair or sadness or depression 15 years down the road, that's when it'll strike. You might have forgotten the initial activity that you were engaged in. But that 15 years to these type of beings is just the blink of an eye. So again, steer clear of those type of activities. One of the reasons why the topic is so popular out in society is for some of the reasons that I'm talking about. Because we like, or some of us like to live a little bit dangerously. We like to play on the wild side. Many times not really taking it that seriously, but thinking that maybe we can get a thrill out of it. Maybe it'll be a kick. But for people who have studied these things over the years, they can tell you that it is a very serious issue. A strange reality is that there are people in the paranormal field, people who are paranormal researchers, people who are paranormal investigators. Some of them don't acknowledge the reality of demonic activity. Now, this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, they simply don't want to deal with that because it can be so negative and so dramatic and so horrific. They just kind of navigate around those type of cases, of occurrences. There's one very notable group of investigators. I won't name them, but they are on television weekly, who will go into an investigation, and if they determine that it's a demonic situation, they won't have anything to do with it. And so you won't ever see demonic hauntings on their television show. Then there are some researchers who are afraid that if they openly acknowledge the reality of demonic manifestations, that they would be forced to embrace some kind of theology. And they're giving credence to one theological construct over another, so on and so forth. I think that it's an understandable concept, but I think it is a little silly to assume that if you acknowledge the reality of the demonic, that somehow you have become some religious fanatic. Now, those do exist. I'll get to those in a minute. But to fail to acknowledge the reality of a significant part of your field of study calls into question your intellectual integrity. And as a researcher, you must maintain intellectual honesty, or you're not really doing anything. You're not really doing anything valid. You're not really helping further the discipline. Now, there are the people on the other side of the spectrum who are doing paranormal research expressly to attempt to validate their theological construct. What do I mean? Well, they're out there doing paranormal investigations, and they have as their basis a theological framework. And they use those investigations, they use their research as a method by which they can hold up or verify or support or validate whatever that belief system is that they already hold. Again, self-defeating. And it's self-defeating because you're assuming, and it's a little bit egocentric, I think, making the assumption that your belief system adequately encompasses and explains the entire spectrum of paranormal manifestations. So some of these researchers will go in and they see the demon everywhere. Or there's an orb, it's a demon. There's an EVP, it's a demon. There's a strange sound, it's a demon. Now, those types are not too difficult to recognize because, like I said, it's no matter what the situation is, every manifestation of the paranormal is the devil. So these are some of the things you have to look for. So demonology is a fascinating and frightening area of study. Now, we could probably talk about this for hour after hour after hour. And we'll probably pick back up on this subject in a future episode because there's a lot more in-depth material, including actual, case histories and examples of what can go on in some of these situations that I'd like to share with you. But I had not really touched on the subject of demonology on this program, and I wanted to for this episode. So I hope you found it insightful, informative. And I do want to say, I get some feedback and comments on YouTube and on Facebook, and I really appreciate it. And I love it that so many people are discovering this program and they are watching it and commenting on it. And so if you've seen this show, tell a friend. I always post each new episode on the Institute Facebook page. Obviously, this will go up on YouTube immediately after we're finished shooting. But it's easy to find on Facebook because so many people are on Facebook. If you're on Facebook already, just type in American Institute of Metaphysics, and there's a Facebook page there, and you'll see this episode and previous episodes that you may be interested in because we talk about all kinds of subjects. In fact, a recent episode is entitled All Over the Map because I'm talking about, 10 different things. So we'll stop there. Thank you for joining me. I am Dr. William Lester. This is episode number 3 of season 3. So I want you to join me next time because I'll be here at my desk.